Before there was a New Age section in your favorite bookstore, where did readers find information about meditation, yoga, spirituality, and aliens? Only locally, and maybe in a few magazines. In this episode, you'll meet the woman who opened doors for authors like John Keel, Dean Radin, and more. Welcome to the Peep Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Maroc, and I'm grateful you're here. The two big ideas behind the Peep Podcast are to show that the paranormal is more normal than most people think, and to connect the science to the sci, including ESP, hauntings, and precognitive dreams. In this episode, you'll meet a retired literary agent named Sandra Martin, and you don't want to miss her stories. But first, happy holidays! For those who celebrate, I hope your Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa have been lovely, and I hope 2026 brings you joy, peace, and love. Here's a quick reminder that my novels, Daughter of the Mystic Moon, The Tritium Hypothesis, and The Dark Season, are available as part of the Smashwords 2025 end-of-year sale. This is a chance to get my books, along with others from many great authors, at a promotional discount. It runs through January 1st. If you're listening on the day this episode publishes, that is tomorrow. You can find the promo link in the show notes or simply visit smashwords.com/sale. Now back to this episode's interview. Sandra Martin opened the door for authors writing about parapsychology, ESP, meditation, and beyond to get their manuscripts into the hands of publishers and onto the bookshelves of Barnes & Noble, Borders, and all the big retailers and indie stores. Back then, if you wanted your books to be read by the masses, traditional publishing was really the only option. And until Sandra, those publishers didn't even know people were interested in these subjects. This is why I am calling her a trailblazer. Here's her full bio. Sandra Martin is an acknowledged innovator in the consciousness, paranormal, and spiritual genres. She has dedicated her professional life to bringing the highest quality manuscripts to publishing, screenplays based on her author's books for feature films, concepts for television programming, and short-form content from this multifaceted field made available to the widest possible audience. In 1984, Ms. Martin was one of the first to host a talk show on subjects identified as New Age in Norfolk, Virginia. At the time, she was an award-winning executive at the local PBS station, WHRO-TV. In 1986, she created Paraview Literary Agency in Virginia Beach and shortly thereafter moved to Publishing Central in New York City. Paraview holds a unique position in the media industry for being among the first to successfully develop literary properties for the worldwide audience of 50 million plus people interested in consciousness, deep spirituality, healing, and the paranormal. As an agent, she developed and introduced many of the concepts, experts, and authors of this mind, body, and spirit genre to the mainstream publishing and television medium. Many of her authors are New York Times bestsellers. James Van Prague's Talking to Heaven was on the New York Times bestseller list for 46 weeks. Dean Radin, Ph.D., wrote The Conscious Universe and was featured in the Sunday New York Times Magazine. Ms. Martin negotiated an advance of $2 million, the largest advance ever for a singer-songwriter. It was for the singer and songwriter Jewel for her poetry book, A Night Without Armor. During the 90s, Ms. Martin was one of the first agents to develop and launch her own publishing imprint, Paraview Books. In 2000, Miss Martin negotiated a deal with Simon & Schuster to create a new imprint, Paraview Pocket Books, a division of Simon & Schuster Publishing. After 9/11, Miss Martin sold the literary agency to focus on television. Lisa Hagen, on staff at Paraview for over 10 years, became the sole owner of Paraview Literary Agency, now called Lisa Hagen Literary. While agenting manuscripts, Miss Martin also created and executive produced a 3-hour documentary series from the mind, body, and spirit genre for the Discovery Channel, titled The Power of Dreams. It's currently airing on TMC. For TLC, a pilot on ancient mysteries. For NHK, Japanese version of PBS, a 1-hour special, Cowgirls, Heroines of the American West. And for PBS, a 3-hour documentary series, Intuition, for the PBS Pledge Fund Drive. Sandra was executive producer for Is It Really Me?, a documentary on young women coming of age. It has played in the Avignon Film Festival, the Hamptons International Film Festival, the North Carolina School for the Arts, River Run Film Festival, and Santa Fe Film Festival. At the 2005 Durango Film Festival, it won a jury commendation for documentaries. In 2003, they were awarded a CINA, C-I-N-A, Golden Eagle Award. In 2002, Sandra left New York City and moved to Bluefield, West Virginia to take the position of Senior Vice President of Content for Wisdom Television. At Wisdom, she was responsible for developing and producing programming for the new linear cable channel. In 2005, Wisdom was sold to Steve Case of AOL. While at Wisdom, she produced a business series, Wisdom at Work, a Wisdom Holiday, The Gift of Song, Loretta LaRoche, Life is Not a Stress Rehearsal, and at Sirius Radio in New York City, filmed a discussion on the consciousness point of view of 9/11, from the ground up, hosted by Carolyn Miss and Jim Garrison. Ms. Martin served as a judge for the Jackson Hole Wildlife Film Festival and numerous ACE Cable Awards and the New York Independent Film Festival and others. She has served on the boards of astronaut Edgar Mitchell's Friends for the Institute of Noetic Sciences in New York City, International Association for Near-Death Studies, the Rhine Research Center in Durham, North Carolina, Harvard University Center for Psychology and Social Change, and Nurture Art of New York City. Retiring in 2005, she moved back to Bracy and to the farm she grew up on. Friends from New York and Los Angeles often visited and gave lectures and workshops. From that evolved the Dairy Barn events. Miss Martin invited many past clients, new friends, and local experts to come and speak. It has become the thing and eventually became too big for the old Dairy Barn and has since moved to a friend's large and gracious home on Lake Gaston. As a consultant, Miss Martin worked with Time Life Books on their best-selling series ever, Mysteries of the Unknown, and Berkeley Bedell's National Foundation for Alternative Medicine, now called Foundation for Alternative Health. She lectures on meditation, near-death experiences, dreams, and intuition. Gardening, photography, and writing are her hobbies. She also lectures on My Life as a Literary Agent. Let's dive in with Sandra. Hi, Sandra. How are you doing tonight?
I'm fine. I'm much better, as a matter of fact, than I was a few days ago. So this is
I'm
nice.
I am really thankful that you're feeling better and you sound good. Like you sound like you have a full voice and you looked good.
Finally.
So, yeah. I'm excited for you for that because I know it's been a few weeks.
Yes. Anyway, this is it's fun and interesting, me sitting in my mom and dad's house that I could not wait to get away from as a child. I kept telling them, God made a mistake. I'm not supposed to be on a farm. I have to be in a city. And they would, especially my mom would just say, who have you been talking to? And I would say, nobody. I just know that's where I'm supposed to be. It was really sort of strange. But it was also during that time when I was really young, and you know how you're just go with whatever comes out of your mouth.
Hmm.
I saw a little girl walking down our hall, a ghost. And so I told my mom and dad that I had seen this little girl. And they just said to me over and over, you just have a very vivid imagination, Sandra,
I've heard
which
that.
was true, but you know, not that like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it was a good way to grow up on a farm on the Roanoke River. That was, I mean, right out of central casting. So,
But you
I,
always wanted to be in the city.
yeah. And as soon as I could, I moved right in there. And in fact, my happiest years of my whole life were when I lived in New York City. I just felt like I was home there and
Mm.
that that was where I belonged. And, you know, the truth is, I knew so little about anything, literally, because we didn't have that big a world. We didn't do much. Whatever we did was generally with family. And going to Richmond was, you know, an outing for big time. And it was to see my dad's brother and his family. It was not adventurous at all. But I was always on the let's see what can we get into next kind of thing. And of course, I got married very young. I had Lisa when I was a baby, and so I haven't aged at all.
No, you
But
haven't.
but anyway, once uh, I realized that there was a lot more to the world, even as when I was really, really young, like 12 and 13,
Mhm.
than was here. And I had these dreams over and over, and I would tell Mom, I don't think it's fair. I have to go to school every day, and then I have to go to school at night. And I would have these dreams. I would get up off my bed and I would put my hands up like this. And then I would leave. I don't know where I went to, but I would leave and go to school.
So
It was a
you,
school out in space somewhere.
so
And,
because this is audio only, I want to describe what you just did. You looked up and put your hands up to the ceiling.
yeah, that's
And
exactly. And then it was, wow. But it was our whole family were avid readers. All of us were. I
yeah.
mean, gosh, we were a book in our hand all the time. So, but anyway, I got pregnant. I got married. I moved to Richmond. And I moved to Richmond, and I was always very metaphysical and interested in things like that. But I was raised as a primitive Baptist, which is a very narrow Baptist organization.
Mm.
But my grandparents and his brothers, his my granddaddy's brothers, built our church, which we still have. We
Oh,
still have our
wow.
own church. So it was a good, warm kind of growing up
Mhm.
because the minister would say, well, what do you think, Sandra? I mean, just like he was talking to an adult. And I would, of course, tell him what I was thinking. But anyway, so I went to Richmond and I took, this was back in the like in the mid 60s, I guess. I started taking yoga from this woman I met somewhere, um, Marsha Bogle. I remember her name. She was a English professor at VCU. She taught yoga. She was real tall and real thin, and she'd just come back from the summer um, in India learning new yoga stuff. So she knew I didn't know anything about any of these things, but when we would do the exercise. Of course, I was young then; I could do it double twist my whole body up and down. And she would do these long meditations. And I would have these extraordinary experiences. Like one time, I opened my eyes and there was a man standing there, and we had a long discussion. And he was telling me what my life was going to be and how I was really going. This what like this wasn't it. What I was doing then, what I was going to do was going to be really different. And I started to feel like something was, kind of wrong with me that I was having these experiences. So I talked to Marcia about it, and she just said the sweetest things. She said, you're just really blessed to have these experiences, that you're open for this. And
Yeah.
so that was good. And then she went back to teaching. That was for a summer. I took that class. And Lisa tells these funny stories about how when we got to Richmond, Mom would take she and John, my son John, and we would shop churches. We would just go to all these different churches because I was just curious. I wanted to see what they were doing. I went to a Catholic church. No, it was a Catholic meeting, that like a group meeting kind of thing.
Mhm.
And as we were walking, I'd ask a lot of questions, which I always do. And as I was walking out, the priest pulled me aside and said, in the sweetest way, "It'd be really nice if you didn't come next month."
Oh my.
Okie
Too many
dokie then.
questions?
I don't even remember what I asked, but it obviously was not, you know, kosher in some way. But anyway, during that time, I got involved after doing the yoga stuff with a whole lot of metaphysical kind of people. And I was like 18, 19. And I met George Ritchie. Do you know who George Ritchie is? He had a near-death experience in the 50s and in the army in Texas. And
That's why I recognize the name.
yeah, and
Yeah.
he was an outspoken, um, he was like a minister. He was very dramatic and very strong about whatever he was a big guy too. But anyway, he just took me under his wing. And he was like, "I think you're special, Sandra." And I was okay. But he had one of the things that was so interesting. I would take the children and we would go every summer to 2 weeks for a camp up in the mountains near Roanoke. And so, we'd be meditating and God, all sorts of out of body things happen. And one morning he came in and he would go up on this mountain and pray and meditate and stuff because his near death experience had left him so open to things. And he would, give a talk at 10 o'clock every morning. And he said, "Now I'm going to tell you what happened last night, but I don't want to upset anybody or anything."
Mhm.
But he climbed up this mountain where he'd always done his little meditation every year we'd been there. And aliens came
Oh
in
my.
a little spaceship
For real?
for real. And he said, don't tell your parents this and don't tell, but I want you to know that they are real. And he talked about what they had said to him and about why we were here and what we were doing and how we were going through a period of tribulation, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, "And when the aliens come, when their spaceships come, get on." And then that was it. And all of us in that room, just looked at each other. What? Get on? And he was so certain about that. That is, you get on. They're coming to help you. They're put you here, all of that kind of thing. It was really interesting. And so my life in this world started so young. And I was so into it. Oh my God, I was so into it that sometimes I just think I was barely in my body a lot. I
Yeah.
was just flailing around and whatever. But anyway, so naturally I got divorced. And uh, George said to me, whatever you and John had, you brought in these two children. That's good. And I think you should divorce. Your life is going in a different way and his life is going in a different way and
Hmm.
whatever. So we got divorced and I moved to Virginia Beach because my mom and I had started going to ARE in 1968 or 67. So she was a director for Virginia State Travel and had a brochure. And they took her there to show her so that she could uh, advise people that were stopping on the road on 85, where to go.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, ARE, I always forget what it stands for. I know it's Edgar
As,
Casey's.
yeah, it's Association for Research and what is E? Research and Enlightenment.
Yes, that's it. I was
Yeah.
getting there. I was like looking it up because I'm like, I know this. Pop quiz. What's ARE stand for?
Yeah.
Association for Research and Enlightenment. Okay.
And he also, it was also during the time when IANS was starting up, the near death group.
Okay.
And so um, it was really good to be on that sort of beginning edge of that. And then I did like everybody. I got a job and went to work and, lived my life and whatever. But eventually I ended up uh, moving to Athens, Georgia. I was on my way to Bisbee, Arizona, because I had decided to be an artist. I've been an artist off and on in my life, just all sorts of different art stuff. And I stopped to see this friend of mine in Athens that had, we'd been friends in Richmond, and she was an interior designer and all these things anyway. She said, come and stay and visit me. I said, okay, not really wanting to because she was really all about dating. And I just got divorced. That was the last thing I wanted to do.
Hmm.
But anyway, I stayed there and I met all these interesting people. I ended up going to work at the University of Georgia.
Oh, cool.
And that was a very interesting job. I worked for the ecology and entomology department. And I, because I worked there, I could take all these classes. So I didn't really finish high school, but I went right to college right as soon as I could, which was very cool. And but there I met my second husband, Kirk, and so we were there. But so one of the things that I wanted to tell you about George Ritchie was how powerful his connection to the spirit and the wisdom of angelic things and things like
Hmm.
that. All of my life, I have had a severe fear of snakes, really beyond normal.
Hmm.
And I lived on a farm. There this farm. It has three ponds. It has creeks, and then it had the river, the Roanoke River. So there was a lot of snakes around, and so I was always afraid of them. So at this camp that we would go to in the summer, George, I'd had one of those dreams and I got up to go to the bathroom. This, when they had those, I don't even know what they were called, but it was like a screened in porch that had bunk beds. That's where we slept. But I opened the door to go to the bathroom and a snake just came right into my face.
Whoa.
It must have been right coiled on the step. And I screamed so loud that every single person in that camp came running.
I bet.
And George was like, gosh, Sandra. And I told him I've always had this really bad fear of snakes. So I should have known this. We all went back to bed, and that next morning before breakfast, he comes and knocks on the door. Let's go for a walk. I'm going, oh God, he's going to tell me what every single person's told me my whole life. They're more afraid of you than you are of them, and they don't want to hurt you. And you just have this irrational fear. I was like, shut up. Anyway, so we were walking down this little creek path that went to where the rooms were, where, we did the conferences and stuff. And he takes my hand, which he had never done before, but he's got like a death grip on it. And I'm thinking, this isn't good. And he said, look down. And around my feet were all of these snakes. I mean, like black snakes and brown snakes and a green. It
Yeah.
was like he just rounded them up and said, we have to get her over this. And he
Oh,
said, now look down there. They're not they're not here to hurt you. He just went through this long litany of things. And he said to me, your fear is because you have so much anxiety about your life. And you have probably bought this in because you were maybe, died by snake bite when you were in other lives and stuff.
mhm.
And he said, so these particular snakes don't know you. They don't want to know you. They're not going to hurt you. Just let them go. And truly, I'd never been afraid of them since then.
Oh,
But
wow.
he had that kind of powerful thing. He felt he was so in tune with a higher, the higher consciousness.
And that came from his near-death experience.
Yeah, that came from his near-death
Yeah.
experience.
I've met a few people with the same, like well, I don't know about him before, but they had no interest in the paranormal or spirituality. They had a
Yeah,
near-death experience, and suddenly they were very in touch with spirit, and they could, like, that basically have mediumship abilities and that sort of thing. So yeah, it can definitely change your life.
I know George was really like that too, and he was so inspiring, but he was so strong. But he said, I was a 20-year-old kid in the war, and I, was scared to death all the time. But
Mhm.
he said, after he had that near-death experience, where, and he had it down there, he was, it was in Texas, Barkley, something, Texas, an army base, and he died of like double pneumonia or something like that when they had them out marching in pouring rain and cold and whatever, and he got really sick. But you know, anyway, so that was what happened. But he was a he was the first person I think in my life that saw me for who I was, you know,
Yeah.
and understood that I had this depth, even though I was trying to be just like Mom said, be pleasant, be nice, be, Southern. I used to think, God, I just wasn't meant to be Southern. But anyway, so after George and then after Athens, Georgia, I had the best boss there who was head of the ecology program. He just thought that I could do anything. And so, and I really, I couldn't do much, but I was willing to try everything.
Yeah.
So he would send me to Washington, D.C. to these huge government meetings to talk about whatever his program was that he was trying to get money from them. And he'd say, oh, Sandra, they don't want to see an old man. Go up there, wear short skirt, talk to him. I was like, ah! But I did. And he got a lot of money, so he was happy. I mean, I don't know how much they got, but anyhow, he was a really good guy. And but I met my second husband down there, and we got married. And he was writing a book on the return of Jesus, which I bet in my life I have had 20 people tell me they knew when Jesus was coming back.
Wow.
And I would say, well, I would name all these other people who said that and it never happened. And, maybe it's coming back in your heart, you know. And anyway, it was it was funny. But I mean, he was a really great guy.
Hmm.
Too much younger than me, but a nice guy. So I moved back. We moved because he wanted to be near ARE. We moved back to ARE, and I got a job working at Merrill Lynch. But oh my God, that was I just couldn't sell, give me your money all the time. It was just didn't work for me. So I quit and I went to work for WHRO, the PBS station.
Mhm.
which is how I learned about TV. So I also I learned a lot there, but I also learned that I was really good in sales. So they were always looking for money, all PBS stations are.
Yeah.
And I would go and I'd just go and bring them big bucks. And a lot of it was due to Kirk, who would say, like when I was leaving to go to work, he'd say, now, quote, say this after me. And it would be something about a football game or something about a baseball game or something. And he'd say, now, when you meet with this guy, just say, did you see that game the other night? La, la, la. And man, they would just go, wow, wasn't that amazing? And stuff. It was very tricky. And I won 2 awards for that, for his little insights. But
Nice.
anyway, so that was from my age of 0 until I was 30, I guess. And then I my thing is that I don't like to be married, but I like to have a man or whatever around.
Yeah.
It just didn't suit me. So Kirk and I got divorced, and it was in the summer. And Brenda, my sister, worked for a big, huge corporation. She's an accountant and always has these big jobs. And so I stayed and took care of her son that summer at her house so that until I could decide what I wanted to do, because I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And I have had precognitive dreams my entire life. So this, I have this dream that I'm moving from Brenda's house to 57th Street in New York City. I had the address and everything. And I thought, isn't that funny? I've never even really been to New York. We went up there one time when I was married and went to a play and, you know,
Yeah.
and, but it was, pretty detailed. And I told Brenda about it because that was kind of funny. And I told her about it while we were driving. She was driving us here to the farm for Thanksgiving. And so we talked a lot about dreams because I've had so many interesting dreams. And so I came back, and this girl came over on a Saturday. A friend of mine said she should come and talk to me. And I didn't know her then. And she just knocked on the door, and she was somebody that was just before crying. She was just
Yeah.
like tears in her eyes and everything. And so I said, come in. And she said, Carol said you could help me. And I said, well, what's your problem? I seem to always helping people with problems. So she said that she had a book on natural cures for cats, on alternative health books for kitty cats. And she had a contract for it in New York City with one of the Penguin imprints. And that the editor had called her that morning and told her that they were closing that imprint and they were firing everybody. And she said, I need that money for my advance to pay my taxes. And she said, that's what I've been working on for 6 months so I can do all of this stuff. And I was like, I know nothing about that. I don't know anything. I don't know what to do. And she
Right.
started crying, and I was like, So I said, I'll go make us some tea. And I went in the kitchen and made us some jasmine tea. And I came back, and I had written on a yellow legal pad, which my sister Brenda should have stock in that company. She had so many. And I wrote, this is what I would do if it was me. I would immediately write them a letter back saying, I want my rights back right now. And, you don't have any right to do this. And because you're doing this, I want, you know, and I said, and be real strict and strong. You got to be strong, Norma. And so she was like, okay. So she took my little yellow legal pad, Brenda's actually, and came back that afternoon. And she said, read this and see if it's okay. And I swear, it was like she spoke in legalese. She was just like channeling some perfect message. And, she would have her lawyer call, their lawyer, and all this kind of stuff. And I was going, I'm no lawyer. But she was saying, you can help me, you can help me. So I thought, it was only, I think, $7,000 advance or something like that. And I thought that she was such a small fry in big companies. I had learned from working at WHRO, don't pay much attention to small things.
Yeah.
You go do that and take care of that problem for us.
Yeah.
So uh, she signed it, and the last line said, if you have any questions, please call Sandra Martin at 804-422-4911, which was my telephone number then. And I was like, damn. But I said to her, you can't do that. And she started crying again. And I said, okay, it's okay. Go on about your life. So she went away, and about 3 weeks later, early one morning, this guy calls with a real squeaky high voice. I don't know who you are. We've never heard of you, and you don't have any right to do this. And he was just going on and on. I was just going, God, I can't remember ever making anybody this angry with me. So 8 o'clock in the morning. So finally, he said her name, and I went, oh, the cat book. But by then, I'm a Scorpio with like 5 planets in Scorpio, so I'm intense. So by then I just decided he's going to have to deal with me. So I said, you don't know anything about this. I don't know anything about publishing, but you're going to have to talk to me, and you're going to have to be nice to her, and blah, 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 and went on and on. And then we hung up on each other. So I left and went up the corner to Hilltop and got at a Barnes and Noble a paperback book, How to Be Your Own Literary Agent, and I read it that night. It was a little book. And that morning he called me just like he said he would. And I told him the truth. I told him that I was doing this because it just wasn't fair for them to treat her this way.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that big companies did this and da 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 da. And that he was going to have to negotiate this deal from day one with me. And I remember while I was saying that, in my mind, I was going, shut up. But no, I didn't. So I called her after we got off the phone, and I said, this is what he said. I can still see that. He was a young guy. We became really good friends when I became a literary agent. And I told her, what was going to happen, and I said they're going to call you. I gave your number to them, whatever. And she said, please just talk to him. I can't talk to him. Okay. So he called that next morning, and I told him precisely what had happened. But I said, you're going to have to negotiate with me. And I told him I'd gone to buy that book. So it took about a month and a half, but I ended up getting her about $40,000. So this book I had to take
Oh
care
my
of
goodness.
advance. So she was really happy. And because of that, she must have told every single person in Virginia Beach about that. And all of a sudden, I was inundated with these guys from ARE, that write all these books about Casey and about dreams and well, I ended up selling 12 books that were ARE writers and stuff. And I would, God, I was so brave then. I would just get in my little car. I just had a little car. And I would I would call up the publishers, and I would always just go to the head guy, and I would say, I would end up talking to their assistant. I'm a new agent and I want to learn to do this, and tell me who the right people are for this particular manuscript. And so they give me editors' names, and then I call the editors and say, I want to send this to you. I mean, I really knew so little about it. I was like, God, I have to make copies. No, the client's going to make the copies, and you mail them and whatever. Anyway, I ended up doing that for, oh God, almost until December, I think, with people from ARE and people hearing what I had done. Of course, she told everybody in the whole damn world, because she was
Right.
so happy. Anyway, uh, I would just get in my car and drive up the Eastern Shore to New York City, find a parking place, which was really hard. And and during that time, I had met a woman, Claudia Trevellis, who had come down to do something at ARE, and she lived in New York. And she said to me, "If you're in New York, come and stay. You can stay with us." I was like, "Okay."
Nice.
How perfect is that? And so I would sleep on her in her son's bedroom, and they were like airplanes on the ceiling. And she lived like on the 30th floor of a high rise, right in the theater district and all of that. I mean, it was very, very cool. I would just walk around like, a country girl. Oh my God. But I would go and meet all these editors, and I would tell them that this field, the field of dream interpretation, alternative health, intuition, all of these things were all over the United States at classes that you could take. You could
Mhm.
learn to meditate, you could learn to do yoga, you could do all these things. Nothing like that was in New York City. Nothing. I
Wow.
found out later. New York gets everything the last. Claudia was a wonderful, good friend, still is actually a good friend. And I just I sold a lot of books like it relatively quickly. And so I had some income, but publishing doesn't pay until you actually stand on their heads and make them. I mean, at one point I told that the it was, I forgot what book it was, but I was supposed to turn in the manuscript, and I called and I said to the editor, "I have not gotten one check. I am due 3 checks. I am not taking this manuscript. You're not getting this manuscript until I get all that money." Well, he said, "Our offices for that kind of business," I've forgotten the words he used, "are in New Jersey." And I said, "Well, last I heard, there was a way to get to New Jersey and get back, on the bus, on the train, on the car." Anyway, so he knew I was serious. This was the same guy I had all like conversation with.
Yeah.
So anyway, so when I got there, I stayed in 2 sublets, I think, 2 or 3. I mean, it was constantly everywhere, and with my little suitcases in my car and whatever. And of course, my car was broken into twice.
Uh,
And
sorry.
I know that was bad. And but I was telling everybody in New York in publishing that this was the future, that this is what it was going to be. And they would be, they if you don't know whatever, you just don't know. And they would go, "Well, okay, like if you say so, but I don't see it anywhere." And it wasn't anywhere there. That was the most amazing thing. You could take
Yeah.
a meditation class in the whole country,
Yeah.
but not in New York City.
That is mind blowing to me because
I
they're
thought so
supposed to be the
too.
trendsetters up there.
I know, but you know what I found out? And I found this out through lots of different company people, that it's so expensive to do anything for the big companies in New York that they test them out in places like Virginia or Colorado. And
Mhm.
that then they make this big push to do things, because if it's not going to work, it won't work in these other places too. And so they don't spend that money because New York is so expensive. But anyway, so I was selling a lot of books, and I was really up and excited, and things were good, and whatever. And I had written a 3-hour documentary series on dreams that I tried to get WHRO to do, but they had no money, and I couldn't get that much money together.
Yeah.
Like $3 million is what it ended up costing. And so I thought I would move to New York. And so I went up there and I moved around, moved around, moved around. But finally, uh, I got a place on 96th Street that was good, and it was a good sublet, and it could get everywhere and whatever. So that's where I stayed. So when I was up there, I was constantly in cell mode. I
Mm-hmm.
was also so stressed because often I didn't have any money. I mean, there was so many times I did not even have a quarter to get on the bus to go downtown where the publishing houses were. I just had nothing. And it would be, like I would be due $10,000 from various little publishers, but they didn't, it was really hard to get them to pay you. So
Wow.
it was hard, but I had like the head of publishing company saying, "Can we go out and have lunch?" And this is I'm just trying to meet editors, and they said to me, these three people, a man and two women at different times, "How do you know all of this? How do you know this is what's coming?" And I said, "Because it's everywhere in the rest of the country."
Yeah.
And they were like, "What do you mean?" But these people would eventually start saying, "Well, I have this dream all the time and I don't know what it means." And they would give me such insight into their lives. And there was this one guy who would call me when his son would have nightmares. And I was like, "Wait a minute here, guy." It was really interesting that how quickly it sort of turned over into sort
Mm-hmm.
of a mass thing that everybody then was interested in. And they hired editors to do these books and stuff. So I did pretty good in all those things. And I wanted to do this series on dreams, the power of dreams. And it was really hard. I mean, it was the hardest thing I think I've ever done. And it didn't even get done the way I had wanted it to be done because I ended up getting a deal with Discovery. And there's this one funny story I'll have to remember to tell you. But uh, and the guy who was ahead of the production, making all those decisions, was a really nice guy. He was a ladies' man, and he was smart and savvy. And so he did this deal. And so he had been meeting, the group had been meeting in my apartment, which was a bedroom and a kitchen. He said, "Now, Sandra, I'm going to give you a lot of money. And first thing you have to do is get an office. I'm not sitting meeting on your sofa anymore or on your bed." He was so funny. He was just like, "This is just not done." I was like, "Well, I don't have the money to do it." So, but anyway,
It worked.
it worked. And so, but as soon as I did that, then they gave the everything I had written, everything I had done about it to somebody that they'd worked with for a really long time, which I was hoping to learn that process because I had been at this little tiny station.
Yeah.
But anyway, they did it. It aired. It's aired all over the world. They sold it to every university system for psychology departments. So then everybody was pitching me their TV things because I had done that. But they did that, and they did they got me to do a pilot for a group in London about the mysterious world of aliens and, you know, all sorts of stuff. And because I would get these kinds of manuscripts, and I was like, so I write it all up and everything, and they would pay me good, like $3,000 just to write this up and tell them all the people to interview. So that's what I did. And so I enjoyed that, but I really loved books. That was my favorite thing.
Yeah.
And so I was selling a lot of books, and I had a lot of interesting experiences which are worthy of a book themselves. But
Well,
uh
I
yeah.
mean, somebody should write a book about it.
No, somebody should. But so anyway, like Richard Belzer, Do you know that actor Richard Belzer? He was on Law and Order and
Okay, yeah.
Homicide,
I'm
Life
so
in the
bad with
Streets.
names, but as soon as you put them into context, I figure it
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
So his sister-in-law, Emily, I was representing this guy who walked on coals, to tell you you can do anything. You can walk on these hot coals, and got the city of New York to close down this one street so that we could do it. But one of the things the guy from um, Discovery said is that I had to have this office. So we ended up getting an office at 52nd and Broadway. And it was a really perfect office for me. And it was somebody that I had met who was interested in aliens and weird stuff. And he just happened to be walking by and went in. He's from New Zealand and chatted him up and came and said, "Look, sign this contract. This is a really good deal." So I did. And because I had the money, that was really good. Anyway, so I moved there, and all of my stuff was there. I had two people working for me, and I actually, Lisa, my daughter,
Mhm.
got divorced. I can't remember what year that was. They'd been married 12 years. So she must have been like 30 something. She called me and she said, "Mark and I are getting a divorce." I was like, okay. Anyway, so uh, I said, "Come up here and stay with me for a while." So she came to New York and she would say, "I can't be there, Mom. It hurts my stomach. It is too harsh. It's just I'm too sensitive." And I told her, it hurt mine when I first came there. You were bombarded with all of these negative and harsh vibes. But I said, I got used to it. I'm fine now. You will too. So she was working there with me and we were doing a lot of things. So uh, and I was being, really successful because this field was just starting, and
Yeah.
it was doing really, really well. And from me going around and preaching to all of these publishing houses about the future of publishing. I mean, I have a letter from one of these publishers saying that I saved publishing.
Yay.
And I was going, I don't think that's true. But
I think it
anyway.
might be. You definitely had a big influence on it. I mean, if it weren't for you, I get the feeling that when I walk in, you know, when I was younger and I'd go into like a Borders or Barnes and Noble or Books a Million and look for the types of new age books that I was interested in, they wouldn't have been there. So I
Yes, I think
appreciate
that
your
is true.
influence.
Yeah, because they wouldn't have been. God. Anyway, so Lisa came up and I did worked with the guys for the TV series thing. And so Richard Belzer was my friend Emily, who was from Richmond, who was the director of Sesame Street. She could lapse into baby talk in a minute. "So how are you doing today, honey?" She was so funny. And I don't know. Let's see. How did that happen? Anyway, so while I was working at 52nd and Broadway, which is where I worked until I retired, uh, was my office. Everybody came by there. I mean, the most interesting people. Her brother-in-law was Richard Belzer. And I have this something, I know it must be past life or something, but I've met so many movie stars just by chance, just by, "Hi, yeah, it's nice to meet you." When I had an office out in LA, I mean, it was really amazing. People would say, "How did you meet them?" And I'd go, "I don't know, we just bumped into each other or something." It was just really strange. But there you go. Oh, my office was at Mel Gibson's complex because he was
Nice.
interested in any kind of uh, conspiracy you could imagine. And so he gave me an office there.
That is so cool.
I know. And then all my other clients wanted to meet him that
Of
weren't
course.
interested in that because they would come and God, Dean Radin. Do you know who Dean Radin is?
Yes, very much.
Well, he was one of my first clients, and he had only been able to publish in those little publishing houses that just did um, PhD kind of quality things.
Hmm.
And so he said, "Do you think you can sell this?" I said, and I became a really good editor. And so I would edit and say, "You need to do this," or whatever. And so I got him more money than probably anybody in that field had ever gotten in all of the world for that his manuscript. And he was happy, and he told every single person he knew. I mean, right here on this bookshelf, I, the guy who was the god of dream interpretation was a professor at UVA. I did his book. The dean was working at Ions then, and
Yeah.
that was the
Yeah.
big book that he did. I
Hmm.
mean, it was like I was just running as fast as I could to get everything done because I kind of felt like knowing publishing and publishers then how quickly they go, that trend's over. Let's see, what can we find next, kind
Right.
of thing. So, but anyhow, uh,
And so, wait, let me interrupt for just a second because Dean and Ions are a really big deal right now because of The Secret of Secrets by
yes, wasn't that a
Dan
great book?
Brown, which I'm listening to right now. I'm on chapter 96. It's got so many chapters, but yeah,
Well, he's gonna
no
have a
spoilers.
he's gonna have a podcast of the two of them.
Yes, I signed up for a webinar that's on in
Yeah,
Friday or something. I may not.
yeah, it's soon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was so super excited about that.
So when I was talking to him, I said, "So did you guys, I mean, he used to sleep on the sofa in my apartment. That was really funny. All my clients, stayed with me, and I had a beautiful apartment on the 35th floor and could see the Hudson River and the Central Park, and it was like God just blessed me with this perfect place. And I dreamed about it before.
I was going to
And
ask if that was the one you had dreamed about.
this was the second one I dreamed about. So the first one was when I moved to 57th Street. Yeah, the first time. And I kept having that dream. And anyway, I ended up. So let me tell you how that one happened because it's really funny.
Okay.
So I was living at Brenda's, and we were doing whatever, and I was taking care of Colin. And it was late one night, and I'd had this dream that I had told Brenda about. Um, that I was moving to New York. It was going to be it was on 57th Street, and I described this little tiny apartment. From a house perspective, it was a tiny little apartment, and I had all this information about it. And so we were coming. This was at Thanksgiving, and so we were. She was driving here to the farm, and I said, "What on earth do you think that means?" And she said, "Well, it probably means it's small. So you start small with this little new thing that you want to do with books and stuff. And it probably needs, she just made a really rational thing." And
Hmm.
so I said, "Yeah, that's probably exactly it." So I didn't think about it anymore. So a few weeks later, the phone rings like 11 o'clock at night, and Brenda and I were just getting ready to go to bed, and Colin was sleeping away on the sofa, I think. And my phone rang, and I went in to answer it, and this guy says, uh, "I understand you're looking for an apartment to sublet in New York." And I said, "No, I'm not," because I hadn't told anybody that. And he said, "Well, I can't even remember the girl's name now. Said that you are, and I have to go to LA. I'm editing a film for a Turner movie. I'm going to be gone for 6 months, and I need somebody to take care of this apartment. It's a small apartment. It's on 57th Street. You can get on the bus or the subway, blah, blah, blah. You just go in and sales, sales, sales." And I'm just going. So practically, I hang up on him, and I go back and I tell Brenda, and she says, "Don't you remember that dream?" I had no memory of that dream.
Oh my gosh.
And she goes, "I remember that dream." She tells me the whole thing, and I go, "Oh my God, that's right. I don't even have this boy's name or number or nothing." And it was before the call
Right.
recall, whatever that's called. And So I thought, God, I don't know what to do. But I started thinking, when I go to New York again, I'm going to look for a place to live. So shortly, 2 or 3 days later, he called again. And he said, Ms. Martin, I'm desperate. He said it was like $500 or $800 a month. And he said, I have to leave tomorrow and I've packed everything. If you come up, this is how much I'm paying. It'll be, I think it was $400. And I said, okay. And he said, okay, you're saying okay. I'm so excited. And I literally got in my little car and drove up the next day, parked in front of that building, took my suitcase in. He helped me. And he literally left, got in a taxi, and flew off to LA.
Oh, wow.
And there I was there. It was so weird. And I was so uncomfortable because New York is so loud and it's so
Yes.
dirty. And, I was just like, yikes, I just moved from Virginia Beach to here.
Yeah.
But it was handy because I got to see everybody. And, New York is a place of let me take you out to eat or let's go have a drink or whatever. And the food was awesome. So it was
Mhm.
always good. Anyway, what happened after that was the whole literary thing really took off and everybody was calling me, do you have another book on dreams? I sold 12 books on how to interpret your dreams. 12 different books.
I'm looking at my bookshelf wondering which one is from you. Sorry. I have three. So, but yeah, because I do this podcast and I've always
Yeah,
written about stuff like that and researched it. So I
I
probably have
know
a
it.
bunch of
It's
your
only the
books
most
on my
interesting
shelf,
subject in the world, that's for
right?
sure.
Yes.
So I was there and I was doing things, and I am a very social person. So I met people all the time, all sorts of people, and whatever. And Emily, my friend, who lived on 96th Street, and I was on 57th, and we would go to do things together. I would be smiling walking down the street because hey, I'm Southern. I'm in New York City, and she'd say, "Stop smiling. That guy will follow you home. I'm not kidding. He will follow you home." That guy was asking for money or whatever. And I was smiling at him. Oh my God. It was like, she was like really hard. You just can't do that, Sandra. I was like, okay. So anyway, I lived on 96th Street and then we got the office on 52nd and Broadway. And then I sold a couple of Jewel, the singer Jewel.
Yes.
I sold her book.
Nice.
It was when she first started singing and being popular.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was a really good negotiator, man. I
Yeah.
really learned a lot. And nobody taught me. I just figured I must have had that in my life from a past life or something. They would say,
That's
wow,
awesome.
you're really tough. I mean, actually, it's not funny, but it was funny to me at the time. I was very Southern
Yeah.
because I had always lived in the South.
Yes.
And this guy at one of the imprints somewhere around the house or something, uh, I was, I don't know what I was selling him something. And he stood up and he shook my hand as I was leaving and he said, "You're really smart for a Southern woman."
I am only laughing because I mean, I'm from the South too, but I worked with somebody when I worked at Fox 50 who was my boss, very smart, but very, very Southern accent. And she got so mad because she was talking to some IT help in, I don't know,
Yeah,
California or somewhere. And she finally said, I am not stupid just because I'm from the South.
exactly. I used to make these little mental notes. They're going to have to pay double for this book, whatever. But anyway, so then we did the TV series on dreams. And then I started going back and forth to LA and doing deals out there. And see this book right here.
Brain trust.
there's another book. I don't know what I did with it, that I was going to show you, which was the beginning of everything we see on the History Channel, and they were all my clients.
Oh,
Let me
wow.
see if I can see it over here. Every one of them on that TV every day, all the time.
Like, wait, I'm trying to think which are the so like Ancient Aliens?
Ancient Aliens, all the
That's
UFO stuff, all of the mystery stuff, all the conspiracy stuff.
yeah. That's
But those
that's
three
one of my
guys,
favorite it's one of my
yeah,
favorite
it's a good
shows
show.
to well, I enjoy it, but I also spend a little time yelling at the TV and getting my aggression out because sometimes they jump to some conclusions that I'm like not quite sure about.
I
It's just
know
like
it
it's a
is
guilty
funny, and it.
pleasure.
Well, one of the things that is so, uh, I became, good God, I was a walking, uh, oh God, this is one of my favorite clients. I became, I mean, people would come say, somebody told me about you and I want to, can I take you to lunch and we can talk about, and they want to talk about their experience because they didn't have anybody to talk to. There was this one woman who called me and said, could I come and see you? And it was an editor who had suggested it that I knew. And I said, sure. You know, she obviously in my mind had a book. And she came to the office like a week or so after that on a Tuesday morning, I remember, and she came in and she was the most uptight, buttoned up woman. She had on a red suit, but it came like way up here and it had, a tight neck. And she was just so tense that you could just, I was like, oh, don't get too close to me. And she said, I said, well, come in and sit down. And, we talked for a minute about my friend. I said, so what's your book about? And she said, what book? And I said, isn't that why I'm a literary agent? Isn't that why you're here? And she said, no, our mutual friend said that you understood these things. And I had been having so many strange things happen to me. I thought I was going crazy. And she told me that you would help me. So I
Oh,
became a counselor. Half of my life was, saying,
yeah.
yes, people have these experiences and, you're just, she was in a very, very, very stressful job and in finance. And she learned to meditate because she was just couldn't sleep. She couldn't do anything. And when she would get up in the morning to meditate, she would see this person in her bedroom. And that person was just like a ghosty person, but would tell her what she needed to do to calm down and just changed her
Yeah.
life. And she said, I'm just afraid I'm going to be institutionalized if I tell anybody.
So do you think it was like a spirit guide?
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing that she could actually see her spirit guides. Most of us
I
don't get
know.
that.
I know. I was, and she was so sweet. She was crying when she left. So, this was one of my favorite authors, John Keel. He
I
he he was the best. He was the
and
best writer.
and he was one of your authors.
Yeah.
Okay, because I have Mothman prophecies.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh my God. You should. When he got so, he was telling me that he had this option from Richard Gere for like years, 10 years, and that he had never picked it up or done anything. And he said, and so many people had tried to option that book and blah blah blah. He said it's never going to happen. He was a very negative guy. So he called me though one morning and he said, I'm taking you to dinner tonight. Don't go anywhere else. Okay. He had, Richard Gere had called him and apologized for being so long doing this deal.
oh my.
But he now had the funding and everything, and they made that movie. I know this. What?
That's okay. While you're looking, I have a picture of the guys from the Astonishing Legends podcast, Forrest and Scott, and their friend Richard Haddam like a signed picture because I got to meet them a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
And Richard Hatem is the screenwriter for the Mothman Prophecies. So
that's right.
there's just
Oh
only a
my
couple
God.
of degrees of separation between
Pigeon.
us.
Oh, and oh God, John Keel was like the wryest personality, just really he was, really big guy. He was like 6'3" or something like that. A big guy. He looked like Santa Claus, had a white beard and white hair. And but he was very un-Santa Claus like. And but he would say to me, he came to have lunch with me almost every Thursday, which meant I was paying because I was the agent.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we'd go down to what he called the oh God, I'm tired now. I can't remember these names. But the restaurant where all the theater people went to and literary people went to, I mean, to the restaurant. And he said, I'm taking you to that restaurant. I thought something was up. And it was when Richard said he was going to do that book, and he was so excited. And the first thing this sweet man did with his money, besides buying me lunch, which he had never done, was buy a white suit. I was thinking, do I have a picture of that? I think I might. A white suit in New
A
York City
white
in the
suit.
winter. He'd always wanted one, and he bought one. God bless him.
That is
He
so
was,
awesome.
yeah, he was an awesome guy. God, I was so lucky. But anyway, those guys that all three guys, Colm Kelleher, who is a
Hmm.
scientist who's really amazing. He really, I met him because he wanted me to help him to get this mad cow disease book published, which I did. I agented that, and he did that book. And then he met, oh God, what's his name? The guy from Las Vegas, Greg
George Knapp.
George and App. So then they got together at the office, and anyway, it was really fun. And Ingo Swan wanted to get in on it, but they were like, "No, this is our deal," because Ingo was so big in the remote viewing world. Then it was kind of funny. It was great though.
So Colm and George, which book was that?
That's the one I'm looking for,
Oh,
and I know it's right because I just showed it to those girls.
was it
I'm gonna go in the
was it
hall. I
the
have five
Skinwalker
big.
book or
Hunt for the Skinwalker was one of the books, but this wasn't it. This
okay.
one
Well, I
was
have
like an
that one too.
overview of everything, and you probably have it. So, but
That's
this is the book that the first one that I sold was for Colm. That was Brain Trust was the name of it,
yeah.
and it's about his research, the connection between mad cow disease. You should have heard when he first came and was telling me, "Do you know about mad cow disease?" I said, "Well, yeah, I read the New York Times. Yeah, I do." And then he started to say how it happened and exactly how it spread, and because he was in a part of that department and
Oh.
had done that. Ah, so Richard Belzer's books, the name of it was UFOs, JFK, and Elvis. This is the truth.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, it's I think that sometimes my life was just so extraordinary, just in every way. I mean, I helped this woman get a because I had won these awards at WHRO to put together funding, and I don't know how she found my name, but she found my name. Her name was Brenda Seamer, and she came to see me, and was pitching her project she was trying to get done, and so then the next day I went to her house for a dinner or something, and there were pictures in the house of this guy that looked so familiar to me, but I didn't know who he was. You know how I know that person, but how could I know that person? Anyway, it was Roy Scheider. Her husband was Roy Scheider, and he was so interested in all of this. Oh my God. He would just say, I would go and spend the weekend at their house in the Hamptons. He said to me one day, Do you want to meet what's the guy's name? Who's a famous director who did all those UFO weird movies? Oh God. Anyway, he was just like he wanted to help me so much. He was
Aw.
just like, I know everybody, Sandra. I've been in the business forever. If you need anything, just let me know and I can do it for you. He was so proud of me
That's
for
so cool.
doing all of that. But anyway, so those guys were doing all the books about the mysteries and about Skinwalker Ranch. It started all with this and with Colm because he's the guy who did all the research on the ranch. And it just took my business into a totally different way. Uh, I, I was really doing a lot of self help because I thought that's what we needed, that we needed to learn to meditate, we needed to learn to understand our dreams. And it was
Hmm.
very self helpy, a lot of what I did.
Yeah.
I have like two shelves of little bitty books up there, just the mass market paperbacks, and they're all self help.
Yeah. And that
So,
was important. It
yeah,
still is.
I think so too. I
Yeah.
think so too. I mean, it helped me. Every time I would read a manuscript, I'd go and read it to the girls in the office. They were like, "Oh, mama." But anyway, it was really interesting. So, where was I going with that? Oh,
So,
so these
sorry.
guys, when these guys got into what they were doing, I went out to LA with their manuscript and talked to so many people. And at the beginning, they were like, "Oh, that's just too weird. That's just too weird, whatever." But they saw it was, a new trend, a new thing.
Hmm.
And so all of those guys that would come to the office and say, "Will you take us to lunch today because we don't have any money?" And I mean, I would like this guy, I would send him, I knew he lived on Social Security, but he had a tiny little apartment, John Keel. And he was such a good researcher and smart man. He was the best writer of anybody I represented. He was writing books when he was 15
Wow.
and getting them sold. I mean, he was
That's
really amazing.
amazing. Yeah.
But I would send him a card and put $50 bill in it or something because I knew he needed it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so once they started getting into the really strange and weird, people would come to my office just to say, "What is this about?" I mean, in the publishing world, what is this all about? Why are people interested in this now? What does it mean? Are we going to be invaded by aliens, or what's going to happen? Whitley Strieber is one of my clients, and all of those guys that were so into all of that stuff, and Whitley, God, Willie was also a really good writer, and I would I was in LA a lot, and he and his son had a job in LA, and so he and his wife would go out there. They lived in Texas, I think, and stay with them. And I would be out there, and so we'd all get together and talk about publishing and how terrible it was, what was going to happen. But it was fun. So I've gone off of my schedule of what I was going to
Oh,
say.
that's okay because it's all been enjoyable. I knew whatever you
Well,
were going to talk about was going to be good.
it was pretty interesting. I mean, if I hadn't lived it, I don't even know if I could have believed it.
So, one of the things that you had on the email you sent me was misspelled wording on a poster. Art Bell and Whitley.
So I sold their book. They had a huge, huge 1,000 people came to hear them talk in this bookstore on Fifth Avenue, and they were really excited. It was a big deal. I really got a lot of publicity for all these guys. I mean, my best friend worked for CBS Reports. I did two of her books, the Into the Buzzsaw, when she tried to tell a real true story that nobody wanted told. She
Oh,
really had a hard time.
yeah.
Man, they were. she was hiding at my house, and her files and stuff that where she had been interviewing people, like where they were stolen.
Oh my goodness.
And so we were just like, I was like, Christina, don't come to see me anymore. It's like, I know you don't mean that. I was going, I don't know, you're getting pretty scary. But
So the misspelled wording on a poster was,
was Art Bell and Whitley.
yeah.
This is a little funny aside thing. So we're doing something big deal. I don't know. They're going to be interviewed or be on TV or something, and I ordered a town car to take us, Whitley and I, and Art, who was doing that big radio show.
Yeah.
His that radio show guy, whoever owned it, had a limousine. It was as long, was like twice as long as that little town car. So we went around town from place to place to be interviewed, and it would be our little car, and and right behind it this huge limo that everybody was wondering who was in it. God.
Wow.
But when we got to this one venue, this great big huge place that was on Fifth Avenue, and we're standing there, the editor and I, that editor happened to be the first guy that I sold that book to, the cat book to. And we're standing there and we're looking at everything because we are reading to make sure everything. What?
Oh, no, you're fine.
Uh,
Sorry, something just said no internet connection and I'm on Ethernet. So I'm like, how? How is that even possible? I can still hear you. Sorry.
okay. So, now I forgot what I was saying
I'm
because
sorry.
that's all right. It doesn't matter.
Um, it was
So, but
Whitley and Art.
yeah. So Whitley and Art are, big thing. They're being interviewed by everybody. They were on radio, they were on television, and they were just, man, they were grinning from ear to ear because this was big time. And they had all had books before, but they had never had that big a deal. And so, anyway, we were reading the Sun, and I have this poster here somewhere, and the something was misspelled on it, which I wrote down. One letter was wrong with it, and it was just a misspelling on this huge poster from Simon and Schuster that we immediately saw, and both of us just went, and we went over and we just squished ourselves between the two writers and this little tiny space where the big board was, we had the big poster on it so we could stand in front of it so nobody would see it. I have a picture of it somewhere.
Oops.
That was really funny, but
Oh
anyway.
my.
So what did I sell after that? I went through a period of selling a lot of alternative health, and then the remote viewing thing. Ingo Swan was my friend before I went up there, and because he used to lecture at ARE,
Mhm.
and he did my astrology when I was up there, and he said to me, and I remember thinking, God, my guy, he said, you're going to go all the way to the top. Nobody's going to believe it, but you're going to do that. You're going to change everything. And he said, and I'm going to ride your coattails all the way. And he
Obviously, he knew something.
yeah, he was psychic. He was like the best psychic. He started the remote viewing program and did all of that.
Right.
So I had a lot of weird things happening with those government guys, but I don't want to talk about that because it's too scary.
Okay. But again, please write a book.
Well, So one of the funny things that happened though was Richard Belzer's wife was always somewhere else. She has died since. And they had this house. She wanted a house in France. And so when he got all this money, she bought a house in France. And I would go there and spend the summer. It was like a month in the summer.
Nice.
And he was, I'll just tell you this one thing just between us because it would be too weird, but he's passed on now, so I don't guess it would be. But anyway, so I had known him the whole time I was there, and we were good friends, and he was really smart. Like just read all the time. He was an intellectual, and
Hmm.
we could really have some serious discussions about stuff. So he would take me. I went to flew with him one time to France, and another time I flew myself. I flew by myself because I was doing something else and I'd be in Italy. But anyway, so he says, "I'll pick you up in the car, and I'll have him drive us out to the airport." So he picked me up at the office. I had my little suitcase, got in the car, and he says to me, real seriously, "Now, Sandra, when we get to the airport, I'm going to walk really fast." And he's real tall and skinny. "I'm going to walk really fast. And so you got to hustle to keep up with me because I don't want anybody, hey, God, what was his name in that TV show? Hey, whatever."
Yeah.
And and they would just, stop him and go, "Oh, I want your autograph," and stuff. And he said, "Well, I just got to get through there." So I said, "Okay, okay." And so I'm hustling along beside him, and we get on the plane, and we're in first class right in the front. I guess that TV show paid for that for him, for me. But anyway, so we fly to Paris, and we're there doing something. He had somebody he had to do something with, and then we fly to Paris. Then we get on a train and go to another small town, and then we get in a taxi that goes close to where he lives, and then his wife picks us up. And so he's nervous and stressy, and I'm like running, to
Yeah.
keep up with them. I'm going, God, I don't know what on earth is going on here because a guy has pot on him all the time. He's never not have pot that I've seen him. And so we get in the taxi in Rodez, and he starts taking bags of pot out of every pocket,
Oh my
out of his
gosh.
socks, under his sleeve. I mean, everywhere. And he goes, "That's why I had to rush. I had to rush. I didn't want anybody, and everybody knows I'm, Doug Freeman and da 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 da." And he said, "I just don't, and I was just like, I could have been in prison."
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, so we got there, and, it was a wonderful place. He lived on the river. I mean, it was really right out of central casting. It was a beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I would always get bored. I mean, like, I'm bored now. I was, I
You
want to
didn't
go
have
do
a
something
city.
else. Yeah. So, but anyway, he was always, he said to me so many times, "You're just one of my best friends. We could talk forever." I was going, "Yeah, we could." But anyway, he has since passed over to the other side, as has his brother, as has Emily, his sister-in-law.
Sorry.
Anyway, so all right, I'll just tell you one more funny thing, Richard Belzer.
Okay.
So Richard Belzer was always around, and I was always, I mean, he would just come and hang out at the office. So he wanted me, his wife was never there. I mean, God, I don't know what she was doing, but anyhow, he wanted me to go with him on this golf trip. He did not play golf, but it was a group, that show he was on for so long, not Law and Order. It was the one he was on beforehand. Just wanted me to go just so he could have somebody to talk to, whatever, whatever. And so I said, "Okay, I'll go for the weekend." So we flew down to South Carolina to some resort place. And same thing, moving really fast through anything. So I'm sitting in the lobby waiting for him, and um, Ned Beatty was in the same series, TV series.
Yeah.
So Ned comes and says, Richard said that you're his friend here, and for me to wait with him, you wait with you for whatever we have to do. So he sat down and he's talking to me, and he is an interesting guy. He actually started in the theater in Roanoke, Virginia, and was knew all about Virginia.
That's nice. You
Yeah,
got
it was
something in
nice.
common.
Yeah, and so he's talking about all these things and stuff, and Richard's running around, and everybody that comes by says, "Hey, Sandra, how are you?" Or they say, "Hi, Miss Bates, how are you?" And I'm like, "I'm not his wife." And whatever, my name is Sandra Martin, whatever I said. But like 6 or 7 people said that. And he would be sitting there and he'd say, "She's not my wife." And it was so weird. We spent the entire weekend, me saying, "I'm not his wife," him saying, "I'm not his wife." And Richard didn't say anything. But it was like 2 days later, after we got back, that I found out that uh, Ned Beatty's wife looked just like me.
Oh, wow.
And her name was Sandra.
So that's wild.
Yeah, so they all knew each other, and all those guys that did all those whatever those not cowboys and
So,
Indians, but
so
cops
you're
and
like,
all this
I'm
stuff.
not his wife, I'm Sandra. And they're like, yeah, you're his wife because her
Yes,
name is Sandra.
exactly. It was so funny. We laughed about it all weekend. Finally, I just said, "Yeah, I'm going to be your wife now for a day because I'm tired of this." But he was a good-hearted, sweet man, that Ned Beatty. But he he needed a lot of therapy. I mean, he cried twice while we were talking and put his head on my lap practically and
Aw.
just like, "Back off there, buddy." Anyway,
You have that effect on people, apparently.
evidently. And it's just like not my idea. So this was a funny story. All of When I was married to Kirk, I dreamed about Ted Turner all the time. I
Hmm.
dreamed about Ted Turner going out with him, flying places with him, doing all these things with Ted Turner. And this woman who is a friend of mine, well, I mean, she came a friend of mine. She was a reporter for what's the newspaper's name in Virginia Beach, Norfolk? I've forgotten. It's no longer in existence. The Ledger Star.
Hmm.
So she did stories on me for various things. I was always out there doing something. But she had a dream. She told me she had this dream about me and she kept telling me this dream. So she worked for the newspaper there, the Ledger Star there in Norfolk, and we would meet for lunch at least once a week. She was a really good writer, and so I don't know how come she did so many stories on me, but anyway, she did a bunch. And she said, "I had this dream." She was trying to explain it to me. She said, "And you went in this building, in this house, and it was a big, tall house, but you went in the top of it like a chimney, but it wasn't a chimney, it was just an entrance. And you went in the very top, and then you went through, and you did all the stuff." And I used to think, what on earth did that dream mean? Because I was really good at interpreting dreams. I never could figure it out. Years later, she said to me, "You know what that dream meant?" And I said, "I have no idea, even to this day." She said, "When you got to New York, you went in through the top. You had the best deals. You changed publishing. You did all these things. You just started at the top and worked your way down until you got everybody on the same page." And she was just like so amazed by that this woman from Bracy, Virginia, did all this.
Yeah.
I was too, actually, to be
That's
honest.
that is so cool.
Yeah. So,
So wait, did the dreams about Ted Turner, did you
yeah,
ever
so I went
meet?
down to see Ted Turner.
Okay.
So, when I was, I guess I don't know where I was living, but I drove from wherever, maybe, I forgot, it doesn't matter, but I drove down. I called him up. He answered the phone. His office number. He answered the phone.
Wow.
I was just like, oh my God, Ted Turner, I'm talking to Ted Turner. And I said, I have this idea that a proposal to do a series on dreams. Dreams have really changed my life, and I know dreams are important to you because I read everything and I put that in your stuff and la da 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 da. And I really want to do a documentary, a series on that. And he said, well, we don't really do that, but you can come and see me. We can talk about it. So I flew down there. I was staying with Kirk, my husband at that time's parents. His parents were really, really wealthy. And they lived next door to the Gore Swaders, who owned Coca-Cola.
Wow.
I mean, their house was like an apartment building. It was just huge and gorgeous and gardens and everything, as was his parents. His mother had started one of the first real estate companies there.
Mm.
So I'm staying at his parents' house. He's not there because he's working, and I'm like not very comfortable because at one point when they came to see me because we had gotten married and whatever, and so she said Kirk told them nothing obviously about me at all. She was in the front. They had a big Mercedes, and she turned around to look at me in the back seat, and she said, "So have you been married before?" I said, yeah. She said, oh, did you have children? I said, yeah. And my children were old. I looked at Kirk and I was just like, should I laugh? Say they're like young kids. No, my daughter's in college.
He really didn't tell them anything. Oh my goodness.
Anyway, they were very nice, and they let me use their big Mercedes to go down to Turner Broadcast and go and see him. I was so nervous that I broke out in a complete body sweat. I had never done that before, and I'm standing at the front desk to say, "This is my name, and this is my time of my appointment." And the lady was going, "Yep, okay." She said, "I haven't seen him come in today, but he's probably up there." And so his assistant comes down, his secretary, and I walk up the steps. There's a whole bunch of steps like Tara. And you go into his office and we sit down and she goes, he was called away today for a meeting that he had to go and he do. And I told him you were going to be here. And he was really sorry that he was going to miss you and that you couldn't meet again. And I said, I flew down here just to see him. And she said, I'm really sorry, Miss Martin. He's just not here. And, I got back in their car to drive back to their house, and I just turned the radio on, and it said Ted Turner with Gina Lollobrigida, some movie star from 40s, he was entertaining her that day because she was going to make a movie for their Turner
Uh-huh.
Broadcasting. I was like, damn, got turned down for that. Anyway, I drove on home or flew back, I guess. But
So you never got that in-person meeting with
no, I
him?
never did.
Darn.
Although I have a picture of us together at a big conference. It was before I went down there to see him because he was promoting something. I don't know what it was, but I happened to be with a group of people, other TV people. Because, in New York, all the media are so intertwined. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
my best friend was the head of editing, producing for CBS Reports, and I sold her books too. But everybody I knew was either in film, TV, everything. We were
Yeah.
just, it was just a small world. And on top of that, I had gotten Jewel, that girl Jewel,
Mm-hmm.
a $2 million advance. And so all of those people, they just like, not leeches, but they're just like, oh, you got the touch. Let me touch you. Let me touch you. That kind of thing. And yeah,
Okay.
but it was really, it was an amazing life I had during that time.
Yeah.
And when I first moved back down here, all my friends like Emily and Christina is the one who wrote the book called Into the Buzzsaw. She was trying to tell this real thing, and boy, they all, I thought they were going to kill her, but anyway, it was an interesting life, to say the least. So you want to hear another funny story? I mean, it's not funny, but this is why I think that I came in to do all of these things, because I liked the excitement and the interest, and I totally believed that the kinds of things that I was promoting and selling were exactly what we needed as a civilization to get past that. It's either you or me, and that, we're all in this
Yeah.
together, and we're all of one heart, one soul, and we need to feel that way about each other and work together and all that kind of stuff. I was really a goody two shoes, whatever. But I really believed it so much. And, you know, sometimes, anyway, it doesn't matter. But I really thought that telling the truth and getting people out there that could tell the truth was a good way to start. And
Mhm.
Christina won all these Emmys and everything from CBS for her stories on CBS Reports. I met her because we were both at a I have forgotten where it was, but anyway, a PBS thing. She'd worked at PBS too and made documentaries, and so we just struck up a friendship because she was outspoken, she was strong and smart, and the first time she called me after I had known her for a while, she called me and I said, "Christina, I can hardly hear what you're saying. What is in the background?" And she said, "Oh, nothing much." And it was really noisy. And I said, "What is it?" She said, "I'm in the back of a truck of a bunch of Mexicans who are coming across the state line to get in the United States. I'm doing a story on it for CBS Reports." She's whispering in the phone, telling me,
She called you from the back of a truck
yes.
full of immigrants.
And everybody else was speaking Spanish in that room. I mean, in that truck. I said, "Does your husband, I can't, Fred, her husband, Fred, was French. Yeah, 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 he was he a sexy guy." I said, "Does Fred know where you are?" And she said, "Oh, I would never tell him. He'd be so worried."
Sounds like she
But
had quite a life too.
she did. She was really amazing. She grew up in Haiti, and her dad was a CIA agent guy. And so she learned a lot about how to find out secrets and stuff and do things like that, which is how come she won all those awards. But anyway, it was just, I miss her.
Yeah.
She was one of the people when I moved down here that wouldn't leave. She would go, "This is really nice. I want to stay down here." "No, you can't stay down here. You're too destructive." She was just like, "Ah." Anyway, it was hard, but she had to go home.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway, so I did all those books and I did the TV things, and then I retired because I was exhausted. 2008.
I'd say you earned it.
I did. I came down here and I had investors, and I was going to start a TV network in this field. And I had one of the guys, I can't remember his name now, who started a bunch of networks on network TV
Hmm.
and thought that this was a great idea. And the investors were like, "Whoa, guy, you know your audience, you know what they want to, this is a no brainer," they kept saying.
Yeah.
Ingo Swan said, "You snuck by them on these books. They don't, they who own the world don't want people to think they can think for themselves or that their dreams have any meanings and all of that. They're not going to let you do this." And I said, "They haven't bothered me." He said, "Sandra, they have all the time. You have no idea. People would come and tell me, I mean, I could just write a book just on the people who came to say, I work in Hawaii for the government and they're testing this thing out in the ocean and it's killing the dolphins and I don't know what to do. And I had to escape. And she escaped to New York thinking that I was going to save her. And I was just so afraid they were going to kill her and me all
Oh
of a
my
sudden.
goodness.
And so Ingo said, I don't know what. He said, you just snuck in here. Nobody expected some Southern woman to come in here and start telling people they could think for themselves and that they were a wholly human being on their own without any rules or regulations. They could da 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 da. Anyway, he was right. So anyway, that's what happened. And I came back to do this. And the guy that was, he bought my house. I had put all my money, everything into what I wanted to do. And God, I don't want to cry. And he had called another one of the people that I worked with that was doing the deal. Said, there's this guy who really wants to talk to you. He's from South Africa and he thinks this is the best thing going and he wants you to talk and he wants to ask you some questions and stuff. And of course, he wanted to know exactly who I had done deals with and who was agreeing to do TV series and I mean everything. And I was so excited to get, like $20 million to do all that I
Mhm.
told him everything. And so then the guys, within 2 weeks, everybody that said that they would put up millions of dollars withdrew. Big, huge companies,
Oh,
finance investor people, just like that. And I lost my house because I was so determined
oh
that it
no.
couldn't happen. I just kept putting money out, thinking that how could they care about me? Ingo kept saying, you have no idea, Sandra. You have no idea. You just can't go in and say, we're all our own people and live free.
I'm sorry that that happened, but I do think that you can say that because you've been saying that. And there are a lot of other people out there who are able to say that because you open the doors.
Yeah. Dean Radin says, you changed everything. There's never been a mass market book written on parapsychology until you threw yourself into the game.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys would tell me that, and I was so naive. I mean, I was beyond naive. I just believed that people always had the best thoughts, the best. Why would you want people to control people in a negative way?
Hmm.
I just could not understand it. And it really just broke my heart. So I sold my house. It was when mom was getting really sick. And so I came and I took care of her for 10 years. And she died every day, every night. I would help her get to bed and she'd go, pray the Lord takes me tonight, Sandra. Just pray the Lord takes me tonight.
Aw.
Well, she was so miserable. She was a really active, smart, do things woman.
Hmm.
So, and she was funny.
And so now you're in the house that you grew up in.
Yes. The place I could not wait to leave.
Yeah. And so I have to ask, do you ever see the little girl in the hallway?
No, but the other day I was telling somebody about it and I was looking in the hall because I remember where I was standing. It was right there where that one door is because goes out to the hall. And I actually came across the story of that little girl just today when I was putting papers away. I'm trying to throw stuff away. It's very hard.
Yeah. Well, now that we've come full circle, and I've had you talking for almost 2 hours, so I'm sorry. But
That's okay.
your stories were so good. I didn't want to stop you. But now that we've come full circle, I want to say thank you for coming on the show and sharing all your stories and just I I hope that my listeners and I trust that they will understand why I just thought it was such a cool idea to have you on the show. So when Lisa said, "Hey, do you want to talk to my mom on the podcast?" I was like, "Of course I do." Because when I first met you at the Heart Festival or whatever
Yeah.
they were calling it a few years ago, I thought you were really interesting. And you're the reason that I even have a friendship with Lisa, who has been super helpful and lining up podcast guests for me. And so, yeah, of course I wanted to talk to you.
I know. It's funny. Like every 2 or 3 years, all of a sudden, two or three people, it's like they get together and they go, let's interview Sandra Martin.
Mhm.
And, but most of the time it's like about particular things, like books that I have done that they're interested in because of Skinwalker and those kinds of things that they know are out there and
Yeah.
they see my name in it.
Yeah. And I'm actually binge watching The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch right now because I got to meet two of the guys on the TV who are on the TV show
Which
when I was in
ones?
Lexington. Dragon and Thomas were both
Hmm.
at CryptidCon in Lexington a
Oh,
couple weeks ago, the weekend
wow.
before Thanksgiving. Um, and so I knew they were going to be there. I started watching the show because podcasting and writing and full-time job, it's hard for
Yeah,
me to
that's a
watch
lot.
TV. Yeah. So, but I'm like, okay, I'm between books right now. I think I can fit in a show. I'll watch a few episodes of this. I'm totally hooked. I'm already
Isn't
on
that
season
great?
5.
Wow, that's good though. I mean, don't you think it's a blessing that we can find things that we're so interested in?
Yes. Yes, and I'm getting that break between books that I tell myself I need and I don't always do. So, yeah, it's super helpful.
That's
And
good.
it sparks my creativity because I'm thinking about things in a different way when I'm
Oh,
finished
yeah.
that. So, yeah. Anyway, totally off the subject, but
Yeah.
not really.
I
Thank
know
you.
when I would get a manuscript and I would start reading it. This happens so rarely, but I would just stand up, walk down the hall, and go in everybody's office and read it to them. Isn't this great? Can you believe this? This is so wonderful. Oh my God, this is going to be a bestseller. They'd be going, okay, okay, we have work to do.
Right, right.
But that's the gift
Yeah,
of doing it.
yeah. And that's part of the reason I love doing this podcast is I get to meet so many cool people and hear these stories I might not have otherwise heard. And with you, I knew that you had worked with some big names, but I was more interested in the fact that you are a trailblazer. And that's what I'm hoping that my listeners get out of this is like you
Yeah.
you made a big difference in the world and it you kind of just fell into it.
I know, I really feel like I was born to do this.
Yeah.
And I have had one weird thing happen in like psychic readings and things like that. And I had one when I was first moved to Virginia Beach by this guy that Hewlin Casey said was the best psychic they'd ever heard since his dad. And so he said, you should go and have a reading to me specifically. And I said, okay. How much is it? He said $25. And I looked at him and I thought, $25. At that time, it was a lot. He said, I'll pay for it. You need to go. And so he didn't. But I mean, so I went to it. And this guy, Al Miner was his name, he said, um, he told me why I was with my parents and all these different things. But he said, just enjoy life now. Just do whatever you want to do because you're the reason you're here is to change mass consciousness for the better. And he said, and that won't start until you're in your mid 30s and on. And he said, and then that's all you will do is bring people together for this new way. And I remember thinking afterwards, what the hell did he mean? I mean, I was just like clueless. Totally. And it was my second husband, who was an astrologer, who told me that. And he said, Sandra, that's exactly what it means. That's what you're doing. You're selling all these books on these subjects, and you're going around telling everybody that they're psychic too, and they can do this and da da da. And he said, that's what you're doing. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And when I was in New York, I went to LA for I don't know, meetings, whatever. God, I have never been anywhere that I have seen so many addicts that were sitting at desk and unhappy people. My God.
Mm.
Anyway, so I was at a pool party, where a lot of skinny girls were in tiny, tiny, tiny bathing suits. And I was there with an agent that I knew from New York, who always invited me to these kind of places. And I'm just standing there. It's almost all Jewish people. And oh God, I can't remember that man's name. Anyway, this guy comes right over to me. He's standing across the pool. I'm standing on the side of the pool, and I have all my clothes on. Obviously, I'm not getting in the pool. And he walks all the way around, all the way around. And he comes to me and he goes, "Who are you?" And I said, "My name is Sandra Martin, and I'm a friend of Jim Dramatics, and whatever." And he looked at me and he said, "I'm Jewish." And I was like, well, yeah, I think everybody here is, except for a few of us. And he said, and I'm psychic. And then he said, the same thing that guy Almaner said, you're here to make huge changes. You're here to really, he said, you're just a sweet lady that's just trying to change the world, but nobody knows it. And he said, and I think you're going to do it. And I'm going, I don't know. But he was a sweet guy. He held my hands the whole time he was talking. And then my friend Jim said, you ready to go, Sandra? And we left.
He picked you out of the crowd to give you a message.
Yes, he did.
That's awesome.
It was kind of, anyway, but that's my life has been like that. Very strange, different. I don't know.
Well, I think
But
it's
I've
wonderful.
enjoyed it.
Yep.
So,
Well, I do want to say thank you again.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks again to Sandra for sharing her amazing stories, and thank you for listening. Remember, if you want to share your own personal paranormal experiences of any type, use the contact form at peeppodcast.com to get in touch. You can be as anonymous as you like, or you can let your paranormal freak flag fly and share your name. Either way, I'm happy to hear from you. Sharing our stories helps people realize that the paranormal is much more normal than they think. That's peeppodcast.com, P-E-E-P podcast.com. Remember, that stands for People Experiencing Everyday Paranormal. While you're there, subscribe to my newsletter to keep up with the podcast and all my creative and energetic endeavors. I usually only email it once a month, unless I have a special event you should know about. You'll receive briefs on recent episodes, information on any upcoming appearances, plus some occasional fun extras, like this month's random drawing for a signed copy of Daughter of the Mystic Moon. If you enjoy the podcast, please give it some rating love on your favorite podcast app, share it with friends, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Ratings, reviews, and shares help platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify know it's worthy of surfacing to new listeners. And as we build our audience, we have more chances to hear their paranormal stories. A huge thank you to everyone who has given the show some love. You're helping it grow. No matter how you support the show, listening, telling others about it, or any other way, I absolutely appreciate your being here. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe, be well, and Happy New Year.